Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times, a science and speculative fiction podcast. Short stories to stir the imagination by contemporary authors.
Control by Eric Fomley, with music by Fog Machine, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. What are we waiting for, Daddy? Lucy asks as she hugs the small teddy bear closer to her chest. Robert tenses but doesn't answer. His eyes are locked on the back of the bald guy in front of him, who's also waiting with one of his children in the line that winds up to the government trucks. Lucy looks up at her father and frowns. I'm getting hungry, Daddy. Can we go get something to eat soon? Tears swell in Robert's eyes. He sucks in a deep breath and closes them. It works, mostly, and only one tear manages to roll down his face. He doesn't wipe it away. Others farther ahead in the line are sobbing. He's sure he will be too before the day is over. Daddy, why aren't you talking to me? She stamps her foot and tries to pull her hand away from her father's grip. I just need you to wait in line with me, he says. Please, Lucy. He looks down at her, and even though he tried to keep his voice steady, he can tell his emotions are making her uneasy. Why? What's wrong? I'm tired of waiting. I want to go home. I know, Lucy. I wish we could. His chest is tight. It feels like there's a stone in his throat. He doesn't know what to tell her. Even if he did, he doesn't know how. This choice, no parent should have to make it. It's not how life is supposed to work. But what other options were left when they were the ones telling you to do it? Lucy, there's something you need to know. The line is moving quicker now. One of the parents changed their mind about the decision, and some government security guards are escorting her away while she screams. What's wrong with her? Lucy asks. The government is making her do something she doesn't want to do. Tears flow freely down Robert's face. He lets go of her hand and puts it on her shoulder, pulling her close. What's a government? She asks. There's an innocence in her eyes, something he'd always been proud of. Precious, unbroken. They're in charge of everyone in the whole world, in charge of Mommy and I. There's only 3 more people in line. The screams and cries from child and parent alike are loud. So loud, Robert can hardly hear his own voice as he speaks. They don't want people to have too many kids. Only one per family. But I have a brother. Her voice is weak and trails off. Yes, Lucy. He's almost shouting now. 2 more in line. It's a new rule they just made up, and anyone who has more than one has to send the oldest ones away. Until they're old, like Mommy and I. Lucy's mouth hangs open as she looks up at her father. A tangle of pain, fear, and sorrow is plastered on her face. What are they going to do to me? Robert is sobbing. It feels like cold tendrils are squeezing the life out of his beating heart. They're going to put you to sleep, Lucy, he chokes out. So you don't need as much to live, until there's more resources in the world. Will I get to see you? No one is left in line. They're next up. No, Lucy. We don't know what to tell you, what to say. We just found out. I don't want to go. 2 security officers step forward. Robert holds up his index finger to them and kneels in front of his daughter. "There isn't time for this," one of the guards say. "Just 10 seconds. 10 damn seconds, please," Robert barks. He looks into his daughter's eyes. "We wish it didn't have to happen, Lucy, but we aren't in charge. Please, through all of this, remember that Mommy and I love you with all of our hearts." The officer steps forward and lifts Lucy. She screams and kicks, and one officer holds her arms while the other holds her legs. "Don't fight them, Lucy. Don't struggle," he shouts. He covers his mouth as he sobs and watches them take her away. Lucy's face peers over the officer's shoulder. "Daddy! I love you, Lucy." His gut-wrenching sadness flips to anger. How could they do this? How could any of them do this? He clenches his fist and charges after them, trying to stop them before they lift her into the truck. He could make it work, hide her, take her someplace they couldn't find. A sharp sting hits him in the shoulder, followed by an electric shock. He hits the ground hard, convulsing, screaming, every nerve a pinprick of fiery pain. "No!" he shouts. Or maybe it's a whisper. Other officers lift him and shove him away. There would be no hiding her. There would be no making it work. The government owned her. And as much as he hated to admit it, this was the only way where she'd have a chance to live. They'd kill her if he tried to hide her. She's part of the system now, he thought, as the empty dread and regret threatened to overwhelm him. We all are. Halfway House by Tonya R. Moore, with music by Patrick Earn, read by Jenna Hanchey.
The afternoon sun was warm on my face. Even hours later, I'd remember this moment. I stood, staring up at the sky, shielding my eyes against the brilliance. Birds were singing all around me, basking in their dust-laden tranquility. My heart lifted as my gaze swept across the outer walls of the old house bequeathed to me, a parting gift from some distant relative whose face I barely even remembered. I was grateful. It was starting to feel like, finally, there was a place in this world where even I belonged. I went up the paved pathway to the front door. I was making lists in my head of things to do. The roof was in desperate need of repairs. Better get it done before the rainy season arrives. The ivy that crept up the latticed walls needed trimming. The relentless greenery covering the walls and windows was suffocating. Unease slid into my bones, and my hand froze in midair as I reached for the knob to the front door. Oh yes, I shuddered. There was that. My first night in this rambling old house, I spent with my back to the wall and baseball bat poised for a fight. I never knew quite what to expect when I opened the door. I summoned the nerve to push the door open. I crossed the threshold, expecting another disaster. Last night, the place got wrecked. Completely wrecked. My heart ached a little thinking about it. It had taken the whole night to set the house back to right, once my guest departed. My nose crinkled. The air was thick with the scent of incense this time. It was dark inside, so shadowy that I forgot how brilliant it had been outside only moments earlier. The ivy that clogged the walls kept the daylight out, too. I ventured farther inside and turned the corner into the living room. My eyes went wide. Rows of tea lights lined one wall. The flames danced, even though there was no breeze. Along the opposite wall, the job was half done. A woman wearing a deep red sari was lining up more candles and lighting them one by one. She turned when I entered the room. She bowed her head in polite greeting before returning to her task. "Hello," I greeted her, and was surprised at my own calmness. She lit another candle and turned towards me. Her veil fell away, and I got my first clear look at her face. She was beautiful, not young. Her face had a weathered sort of serenity that reminded me of knobby trees that had fallen in the forest. They have that aged thickness. Carpeted by crackled bark, they seem to hum with a primal sort of energy. The new woman stared at me intently, neither critically nor with hostility. She had a sharp and interested gaze. My heart sank when her smile tilted curiously. She must be so bewildered. She must feel so lost. I was reaching deep inside my mind for some inkling of what to do, some way that I could be useful. My great-aunt, who I never even knew, left me this house, but no instructions on how to deal with the things that happened here. The only clue she had left behind had been a hesitantly scrawled note. "Don't desert them, just use your heart." What the hell was that even supposed to mean? Well, here I was. Any sensible person would have run away from this house, screaming, never to return, after that first one appeared in the dead of night. Yet, this place felt like home. My home. Even momentary bouts of panic and terror couldn't usurp that feeling of belonging. I didn't know what they wanted, and they always seemed to be gone by morning. This one, though, was different. Lost though she may have been, she didn't seem as disoriented or demented as the rest. I can't seem to remember how I got here. That last word ended on an expectant lilt. She was waiting, I realized. I cursed under breath. "Do you know why you're here?" It was a stupid question, I know. I was stalling. "I do not," she answered. Not what I wanted to hear. Oh God, I thought, she doesn't know. I'm going to have to tell her. This was the part I hated most. So far, it almost never ended well. She stood, and I quailed inwardly with shame as I took fearful steps backwards. Then, inspiration struck. Do you remember your name? Sarasvati. When she said it, joy split across her face, as if she had reclaimed something precious she'd lost. Are you here to teach me something? I asked, hopeful. Her eyes widened. You? Her hand went to her throat, exposing an intricate and achingly beautiful mehndi. So much for that. I cleared my throat. Do you need something from me? She edged closer. She was so close that I could feel her breathing. I could smell the perfume on her skin. Her voice fell to a helpless whisper. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I was apologizing for my ignorance or for what I was about to tell her. She surprised me by smiling. Not all who come to you will be completely ignorant. Then, you know? She nodded, drawing closer. I have an inkling. She looked around, her eyes lingering on the weathered moldings and filigreed details of the hall mirror's frame. This house? I shrugged. A transition point of some sort? She chuckled, bending back down onto her knees. You're not very good at this, are you? It rankled. I scowled. I just moved into this crazy house a week ago. I never cared much for metaphysics anyway. My grumbled retort sounded lame and nonsensical, even to my own ears. She turned away to face her handiwork. The soft glow of the candles she set out licked at the walls. There was something poignant about that simple gesture. Lights set out by the dead to ward off the darkness. She was silent for a while. When I thought she must have forgotten I was even there, she looked up. Souls are travelers, she murmured. Yes? I smiled. I'd like to think so. It came to me in that instant. I knew exactly what to say. I gestured toward the candles she had lit. Tell me about the candles, Sarasvati. Tell me what you remember about your life.
In this episode of Simultaneous Times, you heard Control by Eric Fomley, with music by Fog Machine, and Halfway House by Tonya R. Moore, with music by Patrick Earn. Theme music by Dane Luscombe. Come visit us at our bookstore in Joshua Tree or online at spacecowboybooks.com. Don't forget to subscribe and visit us on Instagram and Twitter. We'd love to know what you think of the show.